are about to embark on another all-bus challenge. Now, this is something that you and I have done before, isn't it, Jamie?
It sure is. We had an absolute ball doing it. Now, the last one we started at Archer River and had to get to the tip of Cape York. Now, not only that, we had to do it in these old vehicles. Now, I had an old Rangy. Leash had a mighty little Suzuki, but we had a great time. Now, mine, it fell apart on the inside when I got dropped into gunshot, but at the end of the day, we got there and we had a great time.
Hang on, that was you stuck in the middle of gunshot.
Well, it did happen a bit like that.
But this time we're doing something completely different. We've definitely stepped it up, I would say. We're not in Cape York. Let's find out where we are and what we're up to.
This year, in our second ever all-bus challenge, we are sending our crew on an epic adventure across the Simpson Desert. The challenge, however, is not just a simple crossing. You see, back in 1962, Reg Sprigg and his family crossed the desert for the first time by four-wheel drive in a G60 Patrol. So our team have been given the challenge to make their crossing in a vehicle that was also available in 1962. Jamie and Jess have chosen a 1961 Series 2 Landy that has been lovingly restored and maintained by a ripper bloke called Peter. Peter has lent us his pride and joy for this adventure, and with a few mods, he reckons it's not going to have a single issue at all crossing the desert. He obviously hasn't heard of put a stamp on it and send it Jess before. Leash and Borgie have chosen a 1943 Chevy Blitz. Yep, they picked a four-wheel drive truck. Leash reckons it's purpose-built for this kind of terrain, and she could be right, considering this was the vehicle of choice for outback icons such as Tom Cruise, the Birdsville mailman. This Blitz has gone through months and months of preparation, from a wreck sitting in Rowan's yard in Ballarat to the beast we have today, ready to head towards Birdsville. And sadly, at the last minute, our mate Borgie had to pull the pin due to family commitments back in Sydney. But Leash has roped in a cousin Jessie to cross the desert, and they are hoping all the hard work that both Borgie and Leash did before the trip pays off and the Blitz makes it across. Over the coming weeks, you'll not only see these machines take on the Birdsville track and the Simpson Desert, but you'll also see the vehicles being built and prepared for this epic adventure. So sit back, relax and enjoy Simmo or Bust.
Leash, you know, they tell us that we've got to build something pre-62. Now, I see what you've got and it's big.
It is, but Borgie and I love a challenge. We love something different. I see what you've got, and you've gone with something pretty comfortable.
Absolutely.
How does Jess feel about this one?
Oh, she will love it, absolutely.
Excuse me?
Yeah?
Jess didn't have a choice.
Well, you took on the cow.
I'm about to take on an old bullock, I tell you.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe we should explain that. She actually had an accident with a cow. She didn't take on a cow.
True, very true.
So I believe you've got someone coming in.
Yes, I do, and I think I could hear a noise in the background happening right now.
And Jamie's guest is none other than Doug Sprigg, one of the first people to cross the desert. He may have been just 7 at the time, but he knows plenty.
G'day, Doug.
Okay, how you going?
Very well, and yourself?
Yeah, mate, how are you?
Good to see you. Yeah.
Well, you wore the appropriate hat.
Oh, I wasn't sure it was the appropriate hat, but that's what we went across the desert in first time.
It works. Now, the last time I saw you was about 7 or 8 years ago up at your place at Arkaroola.
Yeah.
But tell me, what do you reckon of these rigs?
Oh, well, I've only just seen them. But,
I know.
Yeah. Oh, this one looks in too good a condition, actually.
Well, that's what we're hoping for, so we make it round it, you know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it will be.
Now, hang
it
on.
will be.
This is Series 1 or 2? 2.
Series 2.
Early Series 2.
So
yeah.
what we're aiming for
Yeah.
is we've got, well, this is 61 model.
Yeah.
You crossed it with your parents in 62, didn't you?
That's right, yep. Yeah.
So we're on the track.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. The Land Rovers, of course, have got those vents just below the windshield level, like the Nissan had, because in 62 I was 7 years old, and that was my windshield. I could see out through there.
Is that right?
I had a very,
good.
very narrow view of the world, and it stayed that way forever.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, come and have a look through.
I'd love to. Huh?
Catching up with Doug from Arkaroola. Well, I've been there. I've seen him once before. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, and he hasn't changed a bit. He's a comedian, no matter how you look at it, but he's a wealth of knowledge. The information he knows, it's something you could write a book about, because, I mean, we talk about a Blitz, or we talk about the Land Rover, we talk about the Nissan. He knows something about all of them. Battery in the back to run a fridge, and We're good to go.
But there's no oil leaks.
No, these don't leak.
Ah.
No, not these ones. Not when they're on the dirt. You don't notice a thing.
All right, Jamie. So enough about the Landy. Doug,
Yeah.
come and I'll show you a real truck.
Is this
yeah?
a monkey? Is this a monkey face Blitz?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So we've added a few little comforts to the front you probably wouldn't have seen.
No.
back then.
And I don't reckon they had LED headlights.
No, you noticed that.
Yeah. We had same model as a crane.
Yes.
And I reckon, I mean, shouldn't have given it away, but great old machines these.
So, but pretty much everything engine-wise we've kept as is.
Yeah.
A few bits and pieces we've changed. The wheels are definitely one of the things we've changed. So if you come around here,
The Chev had the really strong front axle. The Ford was a bit on the weak side.
yeah. Well, my granddad would absolutely kill me if I was in a Ford, so
Yeah,
it had to be a Chevy.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
used to drive these in the war, so
I think what really hit me about Doug was just, he was just so down to earth, so normal. You know, he runs his station, he does everything that he does with no real understanding of maybe the impact that family trip has had on people like myself. Doug's knowledge on vehicles was pretty intense as well. I mean, he only had to look at the Blitz. He knew it had dual steering. He knew all those little bits and pieces, and I learnt something from Doug. I had no idea that Toyota had based a lot of their stuff in the early days off the Chevy engine and also the Blitz. So if we're out there and, you know, we get stuck, we can find an old 60 or something like that, we may actually be able to make it work. And, you know, that's all something that I had no idea about. His knowledge was just incredible.
Our crew are catching up with Doug Sprigg, who was one of the first people to cross the Simpson Desert by four-wheel drive, and Jamie had a few questions for him.
So, Doug, can you remember much about the trip?
I do, in part because Mum kept diaries, you know, really accurate diaries. So, 1962, I was 7 years old, and I certainly remember quite a bit, but there were a couple of different trips, and that was the first one, and just having it reinforced that was the first trip, and some of those things that happened.
And that old Patrol, or Datsun, was it the old 3-speed?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wondered.
Yeah, well, it took a hell of a lot of punishment because, with the French line going across the desert, you can keep a little bit of momentum up, but when you're going over individual clumps of spin effects with sand in it, about so high, you don't get any momentum. And when you hit a sand clump, when you try and do a double D clutch back into first, you can get some horrible noises.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Well, I never did that, but certainly Dad did on a few occasions. And the gearbox stayed together. It was just bulletproof.
Well, I was just going to say, they were a bulletproof vehicle.
Yeah. And my seat was sort of next to Dad. There were four of us across the front seat, and we had a drum of 44-gallon drum of petrol and a 44-gallon drum of water in the back.
Yeah, okay.
And that vehicle just went beautifully. Yeah, wow. Amazing. It was just a great adventure for me. I didn't have to worry.
Yeah.
Some people said, "Oh, it's amazing your parents took you to the Simpson Desert," and I think, no, it's amazing. They brought me back. Just remembering what I was like.
but I mean, if you could make, remember something major about it, what would have been the most memorable part of it for you?
I just couldn't. I mean, as a 7-year-old, even I couldn't get over just how the vehicle stood together. Because those old Nissans or Datsuns, whatever they were, Datsuns in those days, were just absolutely bulletproof, and driving. The same vehicle, 50 years later across the desert, brought all that back, just crystallised it. Amazing.
Any desert crossing, especially one like the one our crew are about to embark on, needs a strong support team. And we've got one of the strongest. Let's meet them.
Well, Mike, great to have you with us again. Fraser Island was our last trip on the sand. This time, we're going to cross the Simpson Desert. How do you reckon we're going to go?
We're going to have a great trip.
Yep.
Yeah, there's been a bit of rain out there, and the desert just transforms after a bit of rain. It just goes green, all the flowers come out, and the animals and the dingoes. And we were out there last time, and a fox wandered straight through camp, just looked at us and kept going.
That's awesome.
It's just a beautiful place, it really is.
And you've been across a few times?
Yeah, I've done the Simpson.
This one?
Twice. Yeah, in this.
Yep.
I chose to bring her along again as she's never let me down. And yeah, it's just, we got it set up and very comfortable and everything works nicely. And
Well, I think it's going to be a lot more comfortable than what Jess and I have got in the old Land Rover, and especially what Alicia's got in that Blitz.
oh yeah.
Well, this is a bit different to the high country bloke.
Yeah, just a tad bit warmer, a bit drier, a little less trees.
Are you excited?
Yeah, very excited. First time going across, so yeah, looking forward to it.
Got a different rig this time?
A little bit different. We don't have the power of the 200 series this time. We've got the Hilux, but I'm still pretty confident we should get across no problems.
What it has got though is aircon, so I think you'll be a bit comfier than Jamie and I.
A little bit comfy. You got windows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be fine then. What are you worried about?
Well, I'm here with Mark from Signature Campers, and tell me, Mark, we're at Maree. We're going to cross the desert.
We are.
How are you feeling about the whole thing?
Pumped. It's getting hot already, but it's going to be an epic trip. I'm looking forward to it.
And how do you think the campers are going to go?
Campers are going to go good. We're going to do the preliminary stuff, drop the tyres, make sure all the groundwork's done on them. But they're going to be A class.
That's awesome. And I see you're in a new 200 series.
We got the 200, so we thought we'd bring the big girl out for a play in the sand, and yeah, she should go good.
I reckon we're going to have an epic time out there.
It's great to have you back again, Lewis. It looks like the mighty MUX has had a few mods since last time we saw it.
Yeah, just a couple more. Proper battery system in it now, and a winch underneath in case it gets stuck.
Yeah, I think that'll be pretty handy.
Absolutely. How about the Landy? What's that got in it now?
Me?
Well, that's an upgrade for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, there you go, guys. You have met most of the convoy, but there is one that we haven't introduced. Now, he joined us for the last All Bus Challenge, and he was in with Rick, and you had such a great time, didn't you?
Well, you know, that larder was an adventure up Cape York, and more of the larder ended up on the roof rack than was actually in the larder by the end of it. But yes, it was a great adventure, and I'm pretty excited to be back.
Yeah, look, Matt has been pretty, I would say, almost one of the most important people in the build of the Blitz, making sure everything is just working seamlessly.
I feel like you're being a bit too generous there. There was a lot of people that did a lot of good work, but yes, I did play a part.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of people involved, but Matt did have quite a lot to do with all of this. Now, if we look back at what it was when we got it, I know you had hesitations.
We had a dream, and we started in, and I'm like, I don't know if we'll get there, but actually, I am really, really proud of what we're starting this trip with.
Yeah, I am too.
It's come together, and it looks mean. I think functionally, it's going to absolutely monster the desert. I don't think it's going to struggle. They're brave words, aren't they?
Well, I don't think you're going to struggle in what you're driving. Now, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, back to the Cape York trip with Rick. I had a tool roll, and that was all I got. And I said to Dave with this trip, when he asked me to be involved, I said, well, I'm not coming if I don't have my own vehicle. He said, well, you sort that out. So I got in touch with my mates at All 4x4 Spares and spoke to the team there, and they're like, yep, let's do it. So they've provided me with their 79 series. Now, we also did a little deal with them so that we could take the 79 series and head out into the desert. So we've already done the desert.
Yeah, you've done the recce run.
We have.
I'm glad that he got the opportunity to go out there and really experience the desert, because that was your first desert trip, I believe.
It was.
Because he's not going to be experiencing it quite the same as we head across with these vehicles.
I'm going to be very familiar with under vehicles.
Yes, exactly.
With the vehicles already and the team enjoying a cold one, Leash decided to catch up with Phil, one of the owners of the Maree Hotel where we're kicking off this adventure, to find out a bit more about the history of Tom Cruise and the Birdsville track.
Well, I'm here with Phil from Maree Hotel. Now, Maree is one of those places that I think has so much history, and it's really been kind of a bustling little town for quite some time, hasn't it?
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about what brought you to Maree.
Oh, I guess we've, over the last few years, developed a bit of an interest in the outback between my wife Maria and myself. We're running aeroplanes throughout the region for a while, doing flights between Birdsville and Port Augusta, and a lot out of, obviously all over Lake Eyre and the whole South Australian outback region. And yeah, we added a pub to the plane business. Yeah, just sort of worked, and it's sort of lined up well.
if you can add a pub to any business, I think you're doing well, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, Tom Cruise, just for a moment, let's talk about the fact that Tom Cruise used to do the track that we're going to pretty much start from here. For me, I'm, completely blown away by the history of that. Now, you've got so much information around here about him as well. What's your thoughts on what we're about to embark on?
Well, number one, I'm jealous. I wish I was going.
Yeah.
But been told by my wife I've got to stay.
I don't have one of those. So
Yeah, that's right. Look, I think the truck that you're setting out in, it's going to be, I think it's set up really well. But yeah, you're going to have your challenges along the way. Of course, when things break down and go wrong out there, you're a long way from anywhere, as you guys know. So you're lucky you got a couple of mechanics with you, whereas Tom was an intuitive sort of bloke who was able to fix things as he went along. He obviously carried his selection of parts and bits and pieces, but inevitably it's going to be something that you never expected. That's what's going to fly to bits, and you got to have the know-how to get it back together and fix it. And I think they said in the whole time he did the run, he never missed a run. So it was back in 1936 when he started to drive for Harry Ding, who had the mail contract then. And he drove right up till 1951. He owned the contract himself from 1947 up to about 51 when he sort of stopped doing the run regularly. So his most famous vehicle was the old Leyland Badger, so that he had modified himself to make into basically a six-wheel drive unit. So pretty cluey there. And I guess you look at those vehicles, I mean, they were a mix and match from what was around at the time. Keep those vehicles going, and yeah, just pretty amazing. He would have different trucks, blitzes, whatever, at different times when the waters around and the creeks were up, the Cooper and that, and then he'd have them placed in different areas, so it'd be a boat, unload everything onto a boat and across the river.
Cooper, yeah.
Yep, across onto the next truck, onto the next one, and just the work that they had to do back then. And round trip back then, we can up and down to Birdsville in a day, no worries. Well, maybe not up and down, we can go one way pretty comfortably. But he was a 10-day round trip, 7 to 10.
If things were good.
7 to 10 day round trip if things were good, and if they weren't so good, you'd drag out a bit. So yeah, different times, different vehicles, but certainly, yeah, similar to what you're heading off in, it's going to be a good challenge for you.
Maree is one of those iconic towns that you've got to go to, no matter what part of the country you're in, just to go and check out the pub, check out the scenery around that area, and especially go for a joy flight.
John McDowell Stewart, and he found the springs, so they set up a camp here. Right. And then in 1914, Maree's name changed due to German connotation in World War I. We've got a mix of giver out here. Yep. You see the greens and the yellows all coming in from the flowers now, and the grass is all changing.
Flying over Lake Eyre was pretty incredible. It's definitely a bucket list item that I have now ticked off. Lake Eyre is a lot bigger than what you'd expect, and you need to wear your sunnies up there because that white is blinding.
With the sightseeing out of the way, it was time to say goodbye to Phil and the crew from Maree and set off on the first leg of this adventure. The first real test for these vehicles and our team. A 200-kilometre run up the Birdsville track to Mungarani.
Well, that's it. We're leaving Maree. We've just started up on the Birdsville track and the adventure is now underway.
Yeah, got you there, Jamie.
You excited, mate?
Finally, great to be off the blacktop and onto the ground stuff. It's going to be a cracking trip.
Mate, I reckon it's going to be an absolute corker. I can't wait to get into it. What about you, Blake?
Yeah, mate, really looking forward to it. It's been a little long time coming, but excited to see a bit more of Australia and what's out there.
This is your first time towing in the desert, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Pretty stoked. The Signature boys have lent me one of their TOYTUF trailers, living up in the palace on the rooftop tent, so be a nice change than lying on the ground in a swag.
I have noticed you do love your comforts.
Mate, there is a coffee machine here with some espresso pods if you need a, what do you drink, Jamie? Is it soy macchiato or something like that?
Wow, did you put that in for him, Mark?
Well, he's a dainty traveller. He's got to be in his comfort zone, and that's why we thought it was appropriate to kit him up appropriately.
You guys have got it so good.
Got it all lined up the front. She's driving like a dream.
Lewis, you got a copy?
Yeah, Jamie.
How does it feel, mate? I know you've done a few mods since the last trip to the old mucks.
Yeah, just a couple done, but yeah, looking forward to it. Ready to rock and roll.
Lewis, have you done a bit of research on this trip yet?
Yeah, did a little bit. It's my first time out there, so I thought I'd better be prepared.
What about you, Mike?
How does it feel to be back on the dirt? Dusty, but it's always welcome, mate. What about you, Matt? How are you travelling?
Mate, I'm just sitting back here in air-conditioned luxury, pondering all the wonders that are in front of us as we head across the desert.
So when are you going to swap over and jump in with Leach for a bit of a run?
Oh, mate, my back's gone, eh? I don't think I'll cope. I better stay in here in the luxury of this air-conditioned 79.
Oh, you're unbelievable, you are.
Leash and Borgie's Blitz might look the goods now, but when we first set eyes on it, it was in a Gumtree listing. And thanks to COVID border restrictions, we had to send our mate Macca from What's Up Down Under to take a closer look.
Well, folks, it looks like COVID's got us. Leash and Borgie are stuck in New South Wales. I'm stuck in Victoria, but fortunately, that's where the Blitz is that those two crazy cats want to drive across the Simpson Desert. I'm going to catch up with Rowan. He's got a few of them for sale. We'll see if we can pick out a good one for him.
Geez, mate, who's driving this thing today, you or me?
Well, it's a very good question because we both seem to have a steering wheel, we both seem to have pedals, but I'm looking out the back of the vehicle, mate. Why is it set up like this?
Well, it was set up like this so that you didn't have to crane your neck around the back to see what you're doing all day.
Mate, and I just noticed this thing is going to go like the rocket because it's got the spider in the gear knob.
Spider in the gear knob.
My word, it's got the works, hasn't it? So it's pretty smooth?
Ride-wise, no, she's not smooth. You feel everything.
When Borgie and Leash decided that they wanted to drive the Blitz across the Simpson Desert, I said, you got rocks in your head. What did you say?
I think it is possible. After all, during the war effort, there was no roads between Alice Springs and Darwin, so that's what they used, Blitzes and all other manner of ones to take all the stuff and personnel up to Darwin.
What got you into the old Blitzes in the first place?
Well, it's not a long story. My old man was in the timber industry, and when he got of age that he could buy a Blitz was around about the time that we had more surplus Blitzes than that on the go. So we ended up buying one of those and converted it into a log jinker, and I've just followed in his footsteps.
Has it got power steering?
Oh yes, Armstrong steering is called.
You two want to start getting to the gym now because you're going to need it. How about air conditioning?
Oh yes, wide open. Yep.
I noticed that because half the windscreen's missing. You're going to get plenty of breeze in. It'll probably be, what, 10 degrees warmer in the cab than outside?
Probably, and if you haven't got the engine cover in, it really lets the heat in.
Mate, I reckon they'll probably pull this crane off before they go, but I think it'd be handy for lifting the fridge up.
Well, might have to put this over on the ground, then lift the fridge onto the back of the truck. So you've got to have the fridge.
Mate, they actually will want a bit of weight on the back of there to steady that ride out, I reckon.
Oh, yes, it'll have to have some weight on the back, but it'll probably be fuel.
Or a kidney belt. You might need a kidney belt.
Oh,
boys.
I definitely want one of those.
Mate, how many Blitzes have you got?
Well, I did have 8. I've sold quite a few of them off. I'm down to, once this one goes, I'll only have 3 left.
We're going to get this on the back of the truck, get it into Leash and Borgie's hands, and you know what? I reckon you've got a little bit of work to do before you even think about the Simpson Desert, guys. It's going to be fun to watch.
The Birdsville track isn't just a straight highway. There are plenty of things to see along the way if you take the time.
When we got to Cooper Creek and we saw the barge, it really took me back to the movie and watching that. That was Back and Beyond. It's a great movie. And it gives you a very real perception of what Tom Cruise went through when the Cooper was in flood. Being able to stand there at that barge and look at just how little space he had to get all of, his 7 tons across, that was a bit of a reality check.
I've been across the Cooper Creek quite a few times, never really took it right in. How far that body of water must have been was incredible, but I could not believe how small the little punt barge thing he had was to get across it with the tiny little motor. Just incredible. I mean, it would have been scary just to do that on its own.
This barge behind me was used in the Back and Beyond movie, where Tom Cruise recreated his crossings across Cooper Creek here to take mail and supplies all the way up the track towards Birdsville. Even today, after some serious rain, Cooper Creek can still cut the Birdsville track.
You know, I remember when I was younger, there was all these stories about the Birdsville track being the iconic, place to go in your four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And it was literally just a track. Now it's almost it's a maintained road.
Yeah.
To be behind the wheel of the Blitz is a pretty surreal feeling, and maybe it didn't really hit me at that point what we were actually taking on, to be brutally honest. Driving down the road, looking out the window, feeling the wind in your hair, feeling the heat from the engine, feeling every bump in the road, and kind of realising that this was going to be the next few, 100 Ks. So I was pretty upset when Borgie couldn't come, because he has put so much effort into this vehicle, and he's so passionate about it, he's done so much, but obviously he has great reasons to be able to stay home, and we wish him well in all of that. But trying to find someone who could drive the vehicle that we had, that I wouldn't have to worry about, someone who didn't think I was completely crazy, so I went straight to family, called Jesse, and within about 5 minutes he said, yep, I'll do it. And having him with me on this experience is something I probably can't really put into words, because having family with you is one thing, but having family that can go through everything that you go through, and there's just no worries about it. He just gets in and gets it done. That's a bit of a comfort for me.
When Jamie first told me that he'd got a Landy for the two of us, I wasn't surprised at all. It is totally Jamie's style. Not my style, so I was a little bit dubious. However, the Landy has been super smooth, but with no windows, our hats have been blowing out that window. At one stage, we came through a cloud of locusts along the Birdsville track. Jamie and I don't have windows, and that crosswind was blowing hard. Next minute, we're basically eating locusts.
How'd that one feel, Jamie? Oh, how did they taste? They go straight down the guts?
Probably taste better than Jamie's cooking though.
You would not go hungry out here. There's plenty of protein, especially with them.
Is that the only bugs in the car?
Need to wind the windows up on this, I'll tell you. We're just coming up to the Mulca ruins. Now this used to be the old general store.
Sounds good, Jamie. I need to refresh my packet of Monte Carlos. Do you reckon I'll be able to pick up a pack there?
You never know what you can find in there, Mark.
It was pretty cool checking out the old Mulca ruins. Now that general store, you think it's remote now. Can you imagine going back then, how remote it would have been? They had no access to healthcare out there. They had no mobile phones, no internet. It would have been a hard life for sure.
We've just reached the old Mulca ruins. Now there's a few stories about this place. This was the old shop store. Now it was lucky if it had a customer a week, and in peak season it'd be lucky if it had 2 or 3. It was built in 1925 by George and Mabel Aston. Now they run the store here for many years, but in 1927 they turned it into a fuel depot, and this was midway between Maree and Birdsville, so it was a perfect spot. So old Tom Cruise actually used it as his storing depot as well for fuel, because when he came across the Cooper Creek in flood times, he couldn't carry too much either way, so he had to be prepared. And as you look around here, you can see how arid this place is. There is no water source, so they had to rely on a bore, but you can imagine how hard it would have been and how remote you actually are here. Incredible.
Well, that's the first 200 kilometres of the Birdsville track done and dusted, and the crew have arrived at the Mungarani Hotel. There's even valet parking for the Blitz, alongside some of Tom Cruise's old trucks.
Mungarani Hotel is one of those iconic destinations. You've got to go and visit it.
Heading into Mungarani pub was a pretty cool experience. You've got the two Tom Cruise Blitzes just sitting there. You know, you're driving in the Blitz that we've built, and you kind of feel proud. You feel, you know, like maybe we're doing right by him. Maybe he's looking down and maybe he's laughing at us, but also maybe he's thinking, good on you guys for doing this little trip.
But then you get inside and then it just brings it out, you know, what that old place is about. And it's just so cool because that's a petrol stop, a food stop, a camping area.
Okay, so one of the local station workers, Wazza, had been expecting us at the pub. Word had gotten around that the Off-Road Adventure Show was rocking up to the Mungarani pub. Local station hand Wazza was determined to get a chunk of my hair stapled to that roof. He was negotiating for a while, but he had a pretty fat mo going on. So I was like, mate, if you want my hair stapled to the roof, you better add some of your beard to it.
I'm going. Upwards.
Upwards.
Put it up there.
Yeah, just shaping it, yep. All right, just let me just get a bit of
No, you a hairdresser, are you?
No.
Oh, God.
Far from a hairdresser.
Hey, look at that. Give me a big smile. Hey! Too far, Jess? See that good? Tell me where it's a good spot.
It's in competition.
Hey, what are you eating, man?
One of the joys of my job is I get to miss out on all the fun stuff, like having dinner at the pub and stuff like that. So that means that I go out into the car park and I start working on the vehicles, getting them ready for the next day. Now with the Blitz, it turns out the carburettor on that is not the correct carby for this motor. It's actually come off a smaller motor and we can't get enough power into it.
Now, after the first day of driving, I got into Mungarani and I sat down with Matt and explained that I really felt that there was something lacking. There was a few flat spots when you're driving. You learn to kind of really feel and hear those. And it really wasn't getting up to the speeds that I was hoping to get to. I had read that they can get anywhere up to 90 kilometres an hour. We were sort of sitting around 50. And to me, that meant that something probably wasn't right and it really wasn't able to be pushed that little bit further.
Well, it turns out, as part of our crew, Mike from Clearview is an old racer. He cut his teeth tuning carbies and making race cars go fast with carburettors. So the guy's an absolute whiz on carburettors. Now, I can do okay with them, but he came over while I'm sitting out there in the paddock with a carburettor in pieces and all of a sudden just started imparting wisdom and helping me really get my head around the inner workings of this carburettor. So what we're going to try and do with Mike's help is modify the carburettor so that it can actually fuel this motor. It's going to be interesting to see how we go with that one.
I still think it's running lean. Right, Matt had one of the plugs out there before and it was very, very white. Yeah. So I reckon we get a bit more fuel into it, you'll find it'll have a bit more power and it'll be feeling a bit better too.
So we can only see how that goes.
Take it for a drive.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good thing about You know, these old things, you can play with them and you can be a long way out.
Yeah.
And just keep playing with them until you get them closer and closer. You'll feel it when you drive it.
Yeah, I agree.
After packing up camp and saying our goodbyes, it was once again time to hit the road. Today, 315 kilometres to our destination in Birdsville.
The Birdsville track this time round was the best I've ever travelled it. Well, I think we're just lucky that the grader went through, you know, it was really good. But I mean, how much water they've had out here, for how green and beautiful and lush it is really nice. And I mean, I haven't seen it like that.
Back on the road with the Blitz, I'm feeling really optimistic. I know the boys have been working really hard on it. We get in, we start driving, and although she's going faster, there's still something not quite right. I can kind of hear it pinging at the top end, and I'm having to bring it from 60, so granted we're getting a bit more out of it, down to 50 just to kind of keep the temperatures down. And I wasn't quite comfortable with that. There was just something that didn't seem right. It was really holding me back. So we ended up having to have a chat with Matt once again.
What's going on, Leash?
So Tam's doing a few funny things, just not driving right. It's sort of like a, I don't know, a little bit of like a stall, maybe lack of power.
Yeah, right.
Like that.
Well, you know, we were playing with it last night.
Yeah.
I started to get a bit suspicious. This thing's got a blown head gasket. With the Blitz, I've been a little bit concerned about some of the motor condition. When we first got it, it had a sump full of emulsified oil, which makes the oil look like cream. And that's a sign that possibly there's water getting into the oil, and it's not a good thing. Now, we addressed that as best we could with a motor that really didn't run properly. Now that we're getting out here in the desert, it's starting to run harder, it's doing some work and so on over an extended period of time. We've started to find that there's water disappearing down into the oil. So I'm pretty sure we've got a blown head gasket. So we put a bottle on the bottom of the breather from the motor to see what's coming out, and it turns out water's coming out. Well, that's a bad thing. That really does mean water is getting into the motor. So we're going to probably have to do the head gasket. Hey, hey, hey.
Well, after moving the Blitz off the road, we sent the convoy ahead to Birdsville while we made a few calls. One, to see if we could source a head gasket, and two, working out the safest way to get this Blitz to Birdsville.
So I had to make the call about how we were going to manage this situation, and I decided the safest way to preserve the motor was to tow the vehicle, flat tow it. Now we're in the middle of nowhere on the Birdsville track, and it wasn't really a spot where we could just park up and camp until a tow truck could come and get us. So we decided to flat tow it. Doing that comes with its challenges, and it really is not an ideal situation. You don't want to be flat towing vehicles unless you really have to.
And as much as I would have loved to continue driving, I've got to appreciate also that Matt's here to make sure we get across the desert. So I had to put that disappointment aside and sit there and go, you know what? Let's just tow it in. Let's do the right thing. Let's get it all fixed up. And that will mean that we're going to have a much better drive across the desert. So we're about 40 k's down the road, and I thought Birdsville is not going to have a head gasket for a 1943 Blitz. So who better to call than my Uncle Pete? Now that's Jesse's dad. He is so resourceful when it comes to parts for cars, and he's also got Jesse and myself out here about to cross the desert. I knew that he would be onto it quick smart, and he definitely did that.
Some of the dangers of doing this flat towing, firstly, Leash and Jess were just getting covered in dust. Life was miserable for them. We were trying to keep the speed down, but yet we still had a certain number of kilometres we had to get to, so we were trying to make some Ks as well. But in doing that, the 79 series Landcruiser kicked up a rock.
Hit the passenger's window and it has shattered. And with that, I was shattered as well. I was absolutely gutted. Borgie had spent so much time, and I mean months, designing these, putting them together. We had glass custom made. You know, he hand built everything around them. We also had Jace from U-Butte. He had also contributed to them. So, you know, my emotions at that point were just so far down because we're sitting on a tow rope coming into Birdsville. The car's not really working. We've blown a head gasket. Then we've got a smashed windscreen. Yeah, that was emotional, and I had to really reframe at that point.
When you leave somebody behind, it's always a concern and a worry, but we think they're going to be in pretty safe hands. Now we've headed into Birdsville, we're in a convoy, and it's just that moment where you drive, you see the changes, and then you come in and you go, oh yeah, there's Birdsville races, and it's that moment. Like, I've been here so many times and I still say those things every time. Just like when I get to Big Red, I'll say exactly the same thing. Here we go again. But it's just the moment. I love the place. You look out to your right-hand side and you see the steam coming off the water. It's just one of those places, love it.
So 200 Ks on a tow rope is not fun. Dust everywhere. It was horrendous. So we decided just outside Birdsville, we got Matt pulling over and we went, sorry Matt, but we are driving the rest of the way. Plus, it's a little bit of a pride thing. I really did not want to be flat-towed into Birdsville.
We'd really only just settled into the campsite. We were only here for about half hour. We were expecting Leash and Jessie to rock up hours later, under the cover of darkness. Next minute, we turn around, Leash and Jessie jump out of the Blitz, and they looked like they'd rolled in flour. They were absolutely coated in dust. I wasn't surprised when they jumped in the river.
We pulled up right next to the river. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. We did not want to talk about it. We just wanted to jump in the river and get all that dust off us, and it felt amazing.
No wonder you took the windscreens off. That would have been horrible.
Next week on Simmo or Bust.
Hey Matt, did you order a head gasket, mate?
We're at that moment where I've got to start undoing head bolts that may not have been undone for, I don't know, 80 years.
I've never seen anything like this before. Now, I don't hold much hope for it working, but we've got to have a go.
Does this mean the adventure has ended for the Blitz before it's really begun? Will Matt, Leash and Cow get it running again? How many camel pies will Jamie eat in the meantime? And will anyone conquer Big Red? That's all coming up next week in Simmo or Bust.